Joining us for a conversation is Judson Coulter of Rover Metals. Mr. Coulter, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Thank you again for having me, Maurice.
It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today as Rover Metals has just consummated a new acquisition representing approximately 30,000 acres of greenstone belt that will offer shareholders exposure to critical minerals. Before we begin, Mr. Coulter, please introduce us to Rover Metals and the exciting opportunity the company presents to shareholders.
Yeah, Rover Metals, we're a junior mining company, and we've just pivoted out of precious metals so that our portfolio now also includes critical minerals. And we're really excited about government policy plus just forecasted demand for EV vehicle sales for starting in 2023 and forward.
Mr. Coulter, take us to the 60th parallel in the Northwest Territories, and let's get acquainted with Rover Metals' newest acquisition, the Indian Mountain Lake VMS project, which from initial assessments seems to have a lot of blue sky potential. I understand the Indian Mountain Lake is a Brownfields project comprising 30,000 acres of greenstone belt with a historic resource hosting zinc, lead, silver, and copper. Mr. Coulter, I have a map before us of the Indian Mountain Lake. Tell us more.
We actually, Rover's been trying to get this project since 2018. Just because of we've obviously been working up in the 60th parallel since 2016. We like the project, before this buzz that we're seeing here in 2022, critical minerals. We liked it in 2018 because it had, first of all, a ton of greenstone belt that's been unexplored, but also that Brownfields historic resource, buried into that historic resource, which we'll get to later in the interview. There's 5 million ounces of silver. So that attracted us when we were just a precious metals company in, back in 2018. So, the project, as you said, located at the 60th parallel. So instead of working west of Yellowknife, where, we've been working on our gold project, now we're working, just east of Yellowknife. All the existing goodwill and relationships with regards to First Nations, government relationships, government grants, government agenda for infrastructure, all that is a value add for this project. Work goes back to the 1940s. I think one of the exciting things about the project is that historic resource is only coming from 3% of that 30,000 acres of greenstone belt. So, really a great fit for our company and our shareholders.
Yeah, and you said that only comprises of 3%. That's that blue sky we're talking about right there.
Well, I think one of the number one criticisms from institutional investors now for Rover, we've been a publicly traded company now since 2018, so roughly 6 years, has been the size of our land package and not having quote unquote a district scale land package. And that was another reason we wanted this project in 2018, because it gives us a district scale land package with a ton of blue sky exploration. I mean, tell me where in a secure political jurisdiction in the world you can acquire 30,000 acres of greenstone belt. We've staked every single part of that. So, that in itself is, a huge win for shareholders.
Now, will the Indian Mountain Lake project be considered a second flagship, or is this a non-core asset for Rover Metals?
No, I would consider this to be, given the Brownfields nature of this project, I would consider it to be, our flagship asset. It has the potential, even really, just in and around the historical areas, never mind, the roughly, 20,000 acres hasn't been explored, just in and around the historical resource. It has the potential to be, a tier one copper and zinc asset. Now, it's really the blue sky on the project is really copper. This is a VMS project. There's stringer zones to the zinc lead-silver area that are just all copper and then had very limited historical drilling. So we actually see the ability to make a huge copper discovery on this project. And, I mean, I think it was you, Maurice, that had asked me to watch Robert Freeland's interview on copper being, the new oil. And, really, so we're poised to become really an energy company. And we should talk later in the interview just about the government incentives, both in Canada and the US, that are really going to support critical minerals moving forward here.
Well, thank you for recognizing me, sir. I greatly appreciate that. Well, what can we have a historic resource here, but can you tell us a little bit more about the genetic model?
Yeah, I mean, the good news here is that there was some exploration here done in the 90s, and it's actually a company that was acquired by De Beers, who was looking for diamonds in this area. And we believe that data is still available to us. So, what we're going to do is get access to that airborne data. I mean, to fly LiDAR today, that's $500,000, right? So in terms of the genetic model, that's going to only improve as again, we're looking to get this airborne data and add this in. But, what we have right now are a bunch of historical zones that, really, we even have the workings of a block model on a resource. And, then there's on top of like 4 known historic zones. If you're talking about that map we have of the Indian Mountain Project, that has got historical showings all over it, right? Mm-hmm. So the genetic model is VMS exploration, huge amount of zinc, blue sky, and copper as well. Having, if this project, let's just say we're to go, to the next level, having, an abundance of silver that's grading 130 grams per ton, that tends to make some of these, industrial metal refinery projects profitable when you could sell them, an industrial mineral or critical mineral that's got such a high kicker on precious metals. That could open the door for some investment for us down the road too. Right?
What can you tell us about the infrastructure?
Yeah, the infrastructure, it's first of all, so it's 190 kilometers east of the city of Yellowknife at that 60th parallel. In the winter months, you can ice road from Yellowknife up the eastern arm of Great Slave Lake into the project. In sort of non-winter months after breakup in spring, so for part of spring, all of summer and fall, you've got barge access. And if you've ever been downtown Yellowknife, there's several barges just basically at anchor right in Old Town available for this type of work. You barge supplies up the eastern arm of Yellowknife, exploration, drill, fuel, right to essentially Thompson Landing, which is a deep sea port. And then from there, you use fixed wing or helicopters to transport supplies and right from Thompson Landing into site. So just logistic costs, huge savings there for northern exploration. But at the same time, if this project were to move to the next level, which is trying to get essentially crushed ore down to the rail line, well, you've got the ability to go south across Great Slave to the railhead there at Hay River. And that railhead actually feeds into Teck Resources refinery in Trail, BC. So, good infrastructure. I would also, bring up the fact that there's a huge priority in both the federal and territorial government in the Northwest Territories and the government of Canada to upgrade the Tolston Hydro Dam, which is just south of this project. Relatively speaking, Canada's a big country, so it's relatively just south of the project, but they're talking about twinning or sorry, not twinning, but upgrading the power into Yellowknife. And, one of the proposed routes is having hydro cables go underneath the eastern arm of Great Slave Lake. So, if we're doing our job right, then we're going to be able to meet that lobby for government, to really get hydro nearby to this project, right? So that'll be part of our lobbying efforts with this project.
Well, it sounds very intriguing. What are the goals this year on the Indian Mountain Lake?
Goals we have exploration goals for one. Goal is we do want to acquire that airborne data, work using that, in connection with having relocated. Right now, they've got 90% of the historic drill collards all relocated. So layer on that airborne data, do some ground geophysics, as well as trying to relocate the remainder of those, sort of 10% of historic drill holes. And then, it's really using all that data to define the drill targets, for a phase one drill program. And so that's one of the items. The other item will be really working with the First Nation neighbors, the community of Wet'suwet'en that is close to the project, starting to build good relationships there, including building a team, really amongst our management, that we can really use to build a good working relationship. Currently, we've been working with Yellowknife and Yellowknife area First Nations. So working with the Wet'suwet'en will be, a relationship that we get to work on here in the next year as well.
Realizing that you have to work through the data, do you have a timeline when you think exploration will begin? And then, here's the added on question to that. Do you think you'll be conducting twin drilling or any step-out drilling?
Well, the first part of that is going to be, again, acquiring that airborne data and doing some ground geophysics. I think that work can start, even in the winter months, like even come March, like some of that ground geophysics, March, April. And, then the next step would be, hopefully as soon as next summer, we do want to definitely twin, as well as do step out drilling. Some I think 10% of the next drill program, we probably want to do a $2 million drill program really to do as a minimum to do, do the project justice. So yeah, there'd be a combination of twin and step out. Really, I think we'd want to just convert those historical zones, into sort of almost for an internal inferred resource, focusing on those internal zones, right?
Well, you have us all intrigued. What can shareholders expect in terms of news flow for the remainder of the year?
Well, yeah, I can tell you that we've been following, both the Biden government's, Inflation and Energy Act, as well as, here in Canada, the Trudeau government's, critical energy policy, which is supposed to be out in September. And, we're, as a result of policy direction at the government level, huge tax incentives, not to mention, there's going to be billions of dollars in incentive funding, as well as a lot of ESG institutional investment for these types of projects. So we are looking for, we've just added copper and zinc on the critical mineral list. So we are continuing to look for value add projects that are in that critical mineral supply chain. For example, under Biden's Energy Act, starting in 2023, 40% critical minerals used in an EV car have to be sourced in NAFTA. Like, that's substantial. And that scales up into 80% in 2027, right? So, we're certainly continuing to just, look at US and Canada only assets. And if it makes sense, and listen, there's some gold projects that we like too. So, so I think investors can look forward to seeing, a news flow, some additional projects on top of this Indian Mountain Lake. I would expect to see this deal close and you'd have that announced, one of our next announcements. But then shortly thereafter, hopefully, certainly in Q4, we are looking to add one additional asset.
Switching gears, let's get into some numbers. Mr. Coulter, please provide the capital structure for Rover Metals.
Yeah, for sure. So we have 160 million shares outstanding, rounded up. That represents ownership of our gold projects that we have, including the Captain Gold project, as well as the acquisition of this Indian Mountain Lake project. We've to date we've invested about $4.5 million in exploration at Cabin. So that's also still reflected in our share structure.
In closing, sir, what would you like to say to shareholders?
I just would, I really believe that if you're in the right sector of the junior mining space, we're poised for, a bit of a bubble here. I think you've got government on side telling the large producing mining companies that they need to develop North American NAFTA jurisdiction critical minerals projects. And, if they want to supply, the big four, plus Toyota and companies that have manufacturing facilities on the ground for EV vehicles. So, I really think that, as we move to 2023 and onwards, that there's really, this is going to be a very hot space. I think we're already seeing, copper and lithium stocks out there, or, graphite, some of these great assets in great locations. We're starting to see some of those juniors perform really well. And that's certainly something we've benchmarked ourselves against as a junior mining company, is which companies have performed really well in the last, 9 months when, in the past 9 months, a lot of precious metals companies just really haven't performed of the exploration stage. So, we've certainly looking at, where we see the future. And, I think that, that's pretty much testament to why we're headed down this path.
Last question. What did I forget to ask?
I think we've covered it all. I mean, I think, really the government policies, if you were to drill down on them, that I mentioned, I could guess go into a little bit more detail on that. But, for one, this is a critical minerals, almost like a national safety policy for protecting our economies. The priority to develop these, really for national security. I mean, you can't be reliant on these types of minerals from hostile countries. And this is like something that I just take personal pride in, that we're actually working hard to build these projects to the next level here at home.
Mr. Coulter, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Wishing you and Rover Metals the absolute best, sir.
Hey, thank you, Maurice.
The information presented on Proven and Probable is provided for educational and informational purposes only, without any express or implied warranty of any kind, including warranties of accuracy, completeness, or fitness for any particular purpose. The information is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice, or any other advice. You should not make any financial, investment, or trading decision based on any of the information presented without first undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional broker or competent financial advisor.